Hi everyone, welcome back to the next diecast. In today's video, I'll be showing you and reviewing this 1/18 scale Porsche 911 Carrera 4S Cabriolet made by Maisto, or Maisto, depending on how you want to pronounce it. I got this model from eBay for around $45 in total. Kind of on the higher side for a Maisto model, but this model has actually been out of production for quite some time now. And this specific model is actually a very special model because this model is a dealer edition model. Back in the late 1990s through the mid-2000s, Maisto would actually release a number of their 1/18 scale model cars, initially as special dealer edition models, mainly various Mercedes-Benz and Porsche models. And this Porsche 911 Carrera 4S Cabriolet is actually one example of that. Maisto would release this particular model in the regular retail market around 2003 or 2004 or so. And that version came in two different colors. It came in a metallic dark blue with a gray interior, as well as a charcoal metallic gray with the interior color that you see here, which is kind of like a saddle. But this gloss navy blue with the saddle colored interior combo was only available as the dealer edition model that you see right here. And if you saw the unboxing video I did, this model did come in a special, just plain gray Porsche branded box. And I would say that the dealer edition version is pretty hard to find compared to the regular retail version of this particular model. Some other 1/18 scale models of Porsches that Maisto made initially as dealer edition models include the 2005 Porsche Boxster and the 2005 Porsche 911 Carrera Cabriolet. And while both of those models would be released in the regular retail market like this one, those two models also came in exclusive colors for their dealer edition versions. So I was happy to find this particular model, and this model is actually replacing the Porsche 911 Targa that I also have, made by Maisto. I just thought that this one was more unique and everything, and I wanted a Cabriolet from the get-go, because I did in the past actually have that Motormax Porsche 911 Turbo Cabriolet based off a 2007 model that was really just poor quality. And I decided to replace that with the Porsche 911 Targa model by Maisto. And then I saw this online, and I thought, you know what? I kind of wanted the Cabriolet from the get-go, so I figured I would replace the Targa with this, and I'm ultimately glad that I did. So this model, in terms of just a regular retail market version, I guess we'll say, was sold only for a few years. I want to say from around 2003 until either the late 2000s or the early 2010s or so. I think Maisto did do an overall good job with the details of this model. So I'm going to review the model in the video, and we'll see how this model holds up to more modern Maisto models and modern 1/18 scale budget grade models in general. So this 1/18 scale model is based off the 996 Porsche 911 Carrera 4S Cabriolet, and that was sold between 2002 and 2005. The 996 generation of the Porsche 911 was sold between 1997 and 2005, with a facelift in 2002 that included the headlights that you see here. They were shaped differently from the 996.1 version, where those headlights were shaped more like the Boxster's headlights, and people were not really a big fan of that. So Porsche then created the 996.2 version of the 996 911 series in 2002, where they gave 911 models across the range, which included the Cabriolet and the Coupe, a facelift, and they did introduce various new models to the 911 range, which included the Carrera 4S and 4S Cabriolet, as well as the Targa and the Turbo as well. And Maisto actually made models of most of those Porsche 911 996 models that I just mentioned. I think of all the different Maisto Porsche 911 models, as far as the 996 version goes, this one I would say is probably one of the best ones in terms of just the overall detail and the look and everything like that too. That being said, the Porsche 911 Turbo Cabriolet that Maisto made a model of is going to be very similar to this Carrera 4S Cabriolet. Of course, with the Turbo, you will have the rear spoiler, and I think some minor differences with the interior and the engine as well. So we'll go ahead and take a look at the details of this model. We'll begin up here at the front. Maisto, I think, did an amazing job with just the overall look and shape of the model. The Porsche 996 911 series was definitely not, I think, everyone's favorite in terms of the Porsche 911 generations that have been released since the 1960s. But I personally like the 2002 to 2005 versions, or the 996.2. I think they did make some welcome improvements at that point. And I think the design has definitely grown on me, especially now that we've seen a few generations of Porsche 911 models since then. But again, Maisto, I think, did an overall good job with the look and shape of this car from a general standpoint. In the front here, Maisto, I think, did a great job with these headlights, as you can see. They are, I think, very well done in terms of the overall look and shape. The lenses are nice and flush with the body, and they do, I think, a good job with the molded in details with the halogen bulbs that you see as well. And then you do have that nice Porsche logo that is stamped on in the center there of the hood. Looks nice and clear. It's not a separately cast plastic piece or a sticker. It is embossed on there, and I think Maisto did a good job with that for sure. Down here, Maisto went to the trouble of putting in perforated grills, which they were doing quite a bit in the early 2000s and even into the mid 2000s as well with their various 1/18 scale models. And that was always a detail that I really did like about their older models. They occasionally do that now, but not as much as they were doing in the 2000s. But these grills, I think, look very well done down here. You can see through them as well. You have the German license plate down there too. The paint quality on the model, I would say, is fairly well done. There's a couple of areas here and there that have a tiny bit of like rough spots, but because this is a nice deep dark shade of blue, any of these imperfections, I guess we'll say, are very hard to see unless you like shine a light directly on the model. And I really do love this particular shade of blue, which is only available on this dealer edition version of the model. I'm not sure what the actual name of the paint color would have been for the real car, but I think personally, if I were to get a 996 generation Porsche 911, I would definitely go with either the Turbo or the Carrera 4S Cabriolet in this exact color scheme. That really nice, beautiful, deep blue with the saddle-colored interior. Taking a look at the side, Maisto, I think, did a great job with these wheels as well. These are, I think, kind of the iconic wheels that came on the 996 series Porsche 911 models. That nice kind of five-spoke look to them. These do have the 4S badging in the centers of each of the wheels, and you actually do have branded tires as well. These are the Michelins that you would see on the real car, and a lot of times Maisto was putting branded tires on their models in the early 2000s, so I always did like seeing that. Excellent job on Maisto's part with the wheels and tires, and you do have the nicely detailed brake discs and calipers as well. Of course, the brake disc does not move through the caliper. It just stays stationary, but most Maisto models have that anyway, so not a big deal. And the calipers are a nice bright red and have the Porsche inscription in white lettering on them, and they look very well done. Of course, you do have full steering on the model, and suspension as well, which is a nice touch. And unlike most Maisto models from the early 2000s, the suspension is nice and smooth on here. It doesn't like jam up or anything when you push down the car, so that was kind of a surprise to see that. Nice sturdy side mirrors as well. And although the windshield is made from plastic, that looks nice and sturdy as well. I wouldn't pick up the model by the windshield, but it is a sturdy piece. Sometimes on Maisto's convertible models with the plastic windshield, if you even touch it, it feels loose. But on this Porsche 911 Carrera 4S Cabriolet, it does seem like it's a nice solid piece, which is very cool to see. Nicely detailed wipers as well. That one is a bit bent, but not really a big deal. Back here, I think Maisto did an excellent job with the rear portion of the model as well. The 4S did have this kind of iconic taillight bar in the back here as well. And the 4S models were actually all-wheel drive models. So that's where the 4 comes from. There was the Carrera S, which I think was just the regular rear-wheel drive. But the 4S models did have the standard all-wheel drive on them. But Maisto, I think, did do a good job with the various taillights back here that you would see on the real vehicle. There is a pretty obvious peg, though, I will say, on the clear portion of the taillights. You can see right there and right there. But when you look at it from a far distance, it really is not as like noticeable. But if you turn it this way, you can really kind of see that. Unfortunately, that is how they mount the taillights and headlights on a lot of their releases from the 2000s, but I think Maisto has since kind of corrected that issue with their newer releases. But again, if you look at the model from a distance, you really can't see those attachment pegs. But aside from that, though, I think they really did a nice job with the look and shape of these taillights. The lenses, of course, are nice and flush with the metal portions of the body, much like the headlights are. And they're nice and sturdy as well. There's no, like, loose lenses or anything like that. So that is nice to see that. This brake light is done as a sticker, but it does look at least decently done, especially from a far distance. And you do have the nice Carrera 4S inscription on the back here, done in silver. It is embossed on there, similar to the embossed Porsche shield badge that we see on the hood. So I think Maisto did a great job with that as well. And you do have the exhaust pipes down here too. They actually do paint the insides black, which is a nice touch. Although they're done in chrome, the actual exhaust pipes, I think they look decently done. And if you look at the undercarriage of the model, it is all just solid black plastic, but they do put in some detailing back here for the exhaust system and a little bit of the engine components as well. I figured since I was talking about the exhaust system, I would show the undercarriage of the car. But aside from that, not really a whole lot of detail to see down here. In terms of opening features, since this did just fly open as I had the car upside down, you do have the opening front trunk, which opens up like so. Nice stiff opening piece. It does open up on dogleg hinges, but I don't really mind that because you can't really see the hinges unless you look at it like down here like that. But not too much to see in here. It was a very sparse front trunk on the real vehicle as well. It looks like there is some kind of a fluid cap here or something like that. And it does have kind of a nice texture with the plastic in here too. And Maisto actually does put a liner underneath the hood or the front trunk, as you can see right here. And it does match up with the blue paint of the car. So I thought that was kind of cool that Maisto did that. You don't really notice things like that unless you're, feeling underneath or if you're looking at the car like that. But a lot of times, at least in the early 2000s, Maisto was still occasionally just leaving their undersides of hoods and trunks as just bare metal, barely painted. But on this model, they actually went to the trouble of putting a liner underneath the hood. So I think that's a really cool touch on Maisto's part, for sure. And then you also have the opening rear engine cover as well. Not really a whole lot to see in here. Maisto did a decent job of capturing the look and shape of the car's 3.6 liter flat six that you would of course see on the real vehicle. And it is mostly made of just one single molded piece of plastic. There is some paint details in there and different textures that you see. I see a couple of different fluid caps and stuff like that, and a little bit of a piping. Definitely not the best effort, I think, as far as a Maisto model's engine goes, but I think they did do a decent job in here nonetheless. And it's kind of hard to see with the way that this opens up. But I think for a budget model, Maisto did do a good job of capturing the look and shape of the engine in here, for sure. And one thing I didn't notice until recently is that Maisto actually put in some details underneath the rear engine cover. You can see right here, there's actually a fan, or what looks like some kind of a fan component, a couple of different pipes, and some other components, I guess we'll say. I don't know the names of a lot of these things, so I do apologize for that. Basically, components that you would see if this were the real car. And Maisto very well could have left the underside of this engine cover, undetailed, or just have it be like a flat piece of plastic underneath covering the paint or covering the unpainted metal or something like that. But they actually went to the trouble of putting in all those different details. And that's, I think, a very cool touch you don't really see too often with a budget grade model. So cool on Maisto for doing that. And I think the rest of the engine as a whole does look pretty well done for a budget model, especially from the early 2000s. So great job, I think. And then, of course, you do have the opening doors as well. The interior detailing on the model, I would say, is excellent for a budget model from the early 2000s. You can see on the dashboard that all the different buttons are nicely laid out and they are painted on as well. There is a nice texture going on with the dashboard as well. And you do have the various details such as the Porsche badge on the steering wheel and the painted on details of the shifter too, which is a very cool touch. Maisto, I think, really was paying attention to a lot of these kind of more fine details in the 2000s, and they seem to be going back to that now, which I think is a very good thing to say. The nice detail and texture does continue with the door panels as well. They have the same texture that you see on the dashboard, and there is some minor detailing, like these small red reflectors, as well as these silver handles and buttons on the door panels as well. So I think that's a very cool touch. And then, of course, you do have the Carrera 4S inscription on either door sill. It is actually a sticker, but it does look well done. And this is actually a reflective Carrera 4S inscription too, which I think is a cool detail that Maisto added there for sure. The seats are also very well done. They are the right overall look and shape that you would see if this were the real car. You have kind of that perforated leather look for the center portions, and then you have the more smooth leather for the trim and the headrest portions. They also put in the molded in seat belts as well, which are done as separately cast plastic black pieces. And they also have a nice texture with this rear convertible top cover here as well. And you even have the Porsche logos on the headrest, which are actually very difficult to see, but you can kind of see it better there. And that does really give you a good look at the attention to detail that Maisto put into these seats. Just the different textures and everything, and the coloring, and those small details like those engraved Porsche logos on the headrest. Just very well done for a Maisto model, I think, for sure. This model is definitely one of their better models that they made in the early 2000s, I think. So this model, I think, is definitely a good example of the effort that Maisto was putting into certain components of their models in the early 2000s, such as the impressively detailed interiors, as well as the nicely detailed wheels and tires, and just the overall fit and finish of the models as well. Maisto wasn't doing that for quite some time, but it does seem like they are getting back into that a bit with their newer releases, which is very good to us say. And this model, I think, could use some work in terms of its overall paint quality and some other build quality stuff, like the way that the taillights were mounted, just other like minor things like that. But I think as a whole, this really is a beautifully crafted budget model of the Porsche 996 911 Carrera 4S Cabriolet for sure. And I think if you're a fan of Porsche 911 Carrera models in general, or if you like the 996 generation of this particular car, I think this model from Maisto is definitely a model to consider getting for your collection of 1/18 scale cars. And especially if you're also into Porsche models in general, or into cars of the early 2000s. I think this model is a solid model to get. I do wish that Maisto was still making it, but in terms of just the Maisto 1/18 scale 996, 911 models in general, I think they are widely available on eBay. This specific model here is going to be quite hard to find because it is in the exclusive color that only came on the dealer edition model. But I think as long as you're paying under $50 for this particular dealer edition model, or under $40 or $45 for the regular retail version of this model, I think you're actually getting a solid deal for it. So feel free to comment down below with your thoughts on the model here. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.